I don't often get in front of the camera for videos on this channel, so sorry if you thought I sounded attractive. Now you know better. Also, I recently just moved, so not really set up very well. But this isn't your typical jobbed out video. In fact, this video isn't even for my usual wrestling audience. It's for the Canadian audience. If this sort of thing has no interest to you, I get it. Don't worry. This is not going to be a regular thing. At least I sure hope not. But for Canadians, there is a topic I do want to discuss, because it very well could change how Canadian creators like me make videos and how Canadian viewers like you watch them. So the federal government is trying to pass a bill known as C-11, the Online Streaming Act. It's not too different from when the US tried to pass SOPA, if you remember that, and it's basically a continuation of past bills, namely C-10, with the general idea that the internet and new media like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney+, they should be regulated like Canadian TV and radio already are. Now, with both of those entities, they're moderated by a group known as the CRTC, which stands for the Canadian Radio Television Telecommunications Commission. Rolls right off the tongue. They operate a lot like the FCC in the US, except while also making sure that nobody swears on the radio or shows a boob on TV.
There's no negotiation with the fellas at the freaking FCC.
They aim to ensure that any movie, TV show, song, radio program, and the like all prioritize the needs of Canadians by enforcing a minimum of how much Canadian content, known as CanCon, can be broadcasted. Not meeting CRTC regulations can mean financial penalty or even the possibility of being taken off the air, though usually it's a financial penalty because we are talking about the government. But this regulation is why our radio stations, which can still play Cardi B or Kanye West or Nirvana or AC/DC, also play Avril Lavigne or Nelly Furtado or Nickelback. They are forced by law to both pay a licensing fee every year and to ensure that a minimum of about 30 or 35%, depending on the station, of their total broadcasted content is Canadian. TV stations do the same thing. It's why you can have The Simpsons and The Big Bang Theory, but also get Kim's Convenience or a ton of local news programming, despite the fact that any boomer that has a TV gets all their news from Facebook anyway. It gets even more complicated because there are actually definitions to be met that determine if content is Canadian enough. The artist can be Canadian, the producer, one of the lead actors, the filming location, even where the funds for the project came from. It's really drawn out and boring, and you wouldn't think determining an Amazon Prime product would matter at all in this situation. But new media does also include YouTube and TikTok and Twitch. Where we watch content that isn't created by multi-million-dollar budgets, where normal people, or as normal as I'm ever gonna get, try to entertain you instead of some large studio. What this means is if a Canadian creator like myself uses footage from WWE or AEW, American content, it could be deemed not Canadian enough. By CRTC's decision, I may have to pay a fee to ensure that my videos aren't suppressed from being served to fellow Canadian viewers. And thanks to how YouTube's algorithm works, if I'm suppressed from being served to Canadian viewers, I'm also less likely to be served to Americans, or viewers in the UK, or India, Mexico, pretty much wherever. Even though I'm Canadian, even though I film in Canada, I'd basically be handcuffed to where I may only be able to talk about and show footage from Stampede Wrestling in Calgary, instead of talking about current events. And let's be honest, who gives a shit what the government wants you to watch on YouTube? And this doesn't just affect smaller wrestling creators like me. I know I'm very niche. Vanoss Gaming is Canada's biggest gaming channel. has 25 million subs, mostly built his popularity off Grand Theft Auto and Gmod videos. But the CRTC could have the right to say, we're going to take a portion of your revenue every year, and you are going to need to have to play more Dead by Daylight and Grip, or we're going to suppress you. Mr. Suicide Sheep, which is a music channel with 15 million subs, they could be told, you know, you don't feature enough bilingual content, so we'd like you to feature more French music, or you can just not feature music at all. Watch Mojo, which I didn't even know was Canadian, could make top lists as long as they want. You know, as long as they're using footage that's created in partnership with the National Film Board of Canada. And, frankly, fuck that. Because creators who are small, who are scraping by, maybe now just finally starting to make enough money to consider making this their job, they could get squeezed out in favor of content handpicked by a government agency to be pushed out to you instead. See, it is a lot like SOPA. Where's the fair use? You remember that? This actually just sounds like a super polite version of that internet censorship you see in countries like Russia and China. Just instead of silencing you with a prison sentence, they silence you by making it so that you can't afford Timbits. So a fellow Canadian creator out there, he's out of Vancouver, New Westminster specifically, his name is JJ McCullough. He actually spoke before a Parliament committee recently. He pointed out that YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok are all platforms that should be determined by consumer demand, not by government regulation. And I agree. If wrestling fans want to know about the latest CM Punk news, or a weird moment in Ric Flair's history, there is zero reason that a government agency should decide that a Canadian channel should be buried underneath some jagoff who just points his cell phone camera at the TV and goes, that's crazy. Just because I didn't do a handful of videos about Bernard to fill a quota. Right now, I'm honestly not too sure what can be done about this. You know, with the Net Neutrality Act, you saw a ton of people went up in arms. As JJ's video showed, the parliamentary committee was basically a kangaroo court. There were 8 witnesses, many of which were special interest groups or Bell Media representatives who were already in favor of the bill. The one token dissenter was the medium-sized YouTube creator that they invited just to, be the dissenting voice. They even had a member of parliament prepare gotcha questions to discredit him with as soon as he strayed from the pack. Unlike SOPA and the Net Neutrality Act bill in the States, there's nobody rattling cages right now. There is a website that has dead links encouraging people to tweet the Prime Minister of Canada, except it's to tweet the Prime Minister who left office 7 years ago. I'm not seeing much for streamlined petitions, change.orgs, even a committee to actually physically go and protest politicians from censoring Canadians while pretending to preserve the Canadian voice. As it stands, all creators can do right now is exactly what JJ is doing. Exactly what I'm trying to do, and exactly what other creators need to do. We need to be loud. We need to make some fucking noise. We need to turn this into something controversial and show that Canadians, and in fact viewers all over the world, want the right to pick and choose the content that they want to watch and listen to. Let the consumer decide what they want to consume. Having Trailer Park Boys on Netflix is nice. I enjoyed the show before they went animated, but it should be there because people want to see it, not forced down your throat because Stranger Things didn't choose one of the Canadians to be their lead actor. If the Online Streaming Act was invested in leveling the playfield, as they claim, then you would think they would be doing something to help Canadian creators. They say that this is to help preserve the voice and boost the voice of marginalized Canadians. But if you're not going to fund them, if you're going to punish them, then I don't see how that actually can be done. I'm not trying to be a dick here. I don't want to say that, I have more right to a voice than an indigenous French-speaking woman of color. What I'm saying is if people want to watch my videos, they shouldn't be forced to watch somebody that they're not interested in while my stuff gets hidden from their site. When it comes to preserving Canadian culture and raising awareness of our great nation, I'd more than happily make an extra video every now and then about the history of Dino Bravo's international wrestling in Montreal, especially if there's a bursary included. But to tell me that I have to make my content Canadian enough or it's going to be deplatformed? Well, how do I put this in the most Canadian way possible? Get fucked, hoser! C-11 is not about preserving Canadian culture, because nobody is stopping Canadian culture from being there. Nobody has gone out telling a French-Canadian filmmaker that their film's gotta be in goddamn English. If a French-speaking viewer wants to see that film, they will find that film. And if they don't want to see that film, not only was it not worth seeing, but viewers are going to be plenty pissed if that's the only thing that's going to be served and recommended to them instead of the content that they actually want to see. Instead, C-11 only serves to tell Canadians, follow our rules or lose your voice. I don't know about you, no amount of pretending to give a voice to other Canadians there makes that statement feel Canadian. Unfortunately, as JJ had stated in his video, and I've said a couple times already, there just isn't much noise about this. Either most Canadians don't know or they don't care. After all, based on how a lot of our agencies work, a promise to give a voice to marginalized Canadians sounds great. Except, once again, they're not giving that voice to marginalized Canadians. The French, the female, the visible minorities, the Indigenous people. The intention of Bill C-11 is to make the ability to broadcast yourself online something that's behind a paywall. Just like it was when I had a streaming radio station, because I had to pay every year in order to use the music I wanted to use. But if you don't play ball with how a government agency wants you to make their content, you're going to be punished. Maybe even deplatformed. If you're a Canadian citizen, I implore you, contact your MP. There are form letters online, but I don't think they work. Like, I tried one and it wouldn't fill properly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the description to a site where you can look up your MP by postal code. That site will give you their office number, it'll give you their email, all the contact info you need. In the comments, I'm going to be pinning a form letter to copy and paste into your email, which you can of course add or remove whatever you like. The only way we're going to keep our internet the way it is without regulation and censorship is to do exactly as our neighbors to the south in the US have done and make a shit ton of noise. Because only then do our politicians realize crossing too many of us may cost them their jobs at the next election. Now, if you're a Canadian video maker, a musician, a content creator, I'm going to implore to you too, reach out to your audience like I am right now. At least I'm trying. Rattle that cage. Because the lobbyists behind this thing, like Bell Media, they're going to be more than happy to squeeze small creators like you and me out of here so that we're no longer in the picture and anything that they do would just be smoke and mirrors pretending to be charity and goodwill. Now, if you're a viewer, if you're a jobbed out regular, you're from anywhere else in the world, I appreciate you for listening as always. And I do hope you understand now why I had to make such a drastic departure from my usual type of content for this cause. If this goes well, you're never going to see a video like this again. I'll be making jobbed out content for a long, long time. And I'd like to keep talking about the stuff that you want to see instead of the stuff that a government regulation agency can state that you're allowed to see. Please make sure that if you can, share this video, help raise awareness of what's going on so that we can keep creating for you instead of for some government agency in Ottawa. Normally I have an outro. I don't really know if it applies here because, it's a very, very different video. So I'm going to do some boring, crappy fade out. But once again, if we're going to keep the internet the way we love it, without government censorship and regulation, where the stuff that you want to see is the stuff that is served to you, we can't be quiet about it. Because if we say nothing, the stuff we like disappears. Anyway, thanks for listening.